strategies and concepts discussed are for educational purposes only and do not represent specific investment, tax, or estate planning advice. Investing carries an inherent element of risk, and it is in everyone's best interest to consult a tax, legal, or investment professional. Beth Williams is an investment advisor representative of, and advisory services are offered through USA Financial Securities Corp., a registered investment advisor. Megan Carney, Megan S. Carney PLLC, and Financial Art Builders are not affiliated with USA Financial Securities Corp.
Welcome to Money Healing. I'm your co-host, Beth Williams.
And I'm your other co-host, Megan Carney. We're here to talk about money and our feelings related to it. I'm a psychologist who specializes in helping sensitive people.
And I'm a financial planner. We both talk to everyday people just like you about these topics.
Everyone's mental health and money health journeys are so different. And as unique as we all are, there are some common themes when it comes to how our emotions impact our money and vice versa.
And it's those common themes that we are going to be discussing together, both the themes themselves and some ideas from us about how to move forward and heal your relationship with money. In the next bit of episodes, Megan and I will be unpacking the various emotions and trauma themes that we've encountered within our observations over the last few years.
We discovered that people fell into one of two camps, one that knows their numbers and where they are financially, and those that don't know their numbers and where they are financially. We recommend that you go through the episodes and listen to the ones you believe may apply to you.
Megan and I are big advocates for getting collaborative support for both your mental health and your financial health journey. As you listen, we recommend that you pay attention to yourself, your reactions emotionally, and reach out to either a mental health professional and or a financial professional to help you deal with your relationship with money.
We'll begin by discussing I don't know my numbers and blank. Is there something that comes after that? Emotional themes we'll discuss within that will be fear, avoidance, what happens if I lose or fail, shame, guilt, and even domestic violence and abuse, with the overarching theme of trauma.
We will then discuss I know my numbers and blank. Some of the emotional themes that we'll discuss within that will be hopelessness, fear, shame, embarrassment, burnout, never enough, feeling lost, undervalued, worry, and then we'll also deal with the overarching theme of trauma.
Welcome to this episode of Money Healing. I'm Megan Carney, and I'm here with our co-host, Beth Williams. Today, we're talking about I don't know my numbers and I underspend. We're going to be digging into the thoughts and the feelings, the fear, the avoidance that come up with that. So Beth, what do you notice in your practice when you have clients who come in who really don't know their numbers and they're underspending? Like, first, I guess, let's back up. What does that even mean to be underspending?
Yeah, I would say I think that there's maybe a toss-up between this episode and what we're talking about in the last episode, because it does seem like I see this equally, who's overspending and underspending. I see it pretty much equally across the board. And if you're in a couple relationship, you're probably married to each other. So
Yes.
There's always one that's overspending and one that's underspending, it seems. So I would say personally, I think that underspending means that you're living well within your means and within your needs, to reference that Susie Orman quote that we had the last episode. It's that you could be spending more, and maybe we'll get into this in a little bit too. Maybe you're not celebrating life as much as you could be. Maybe that's fine, but it seems like oftentimes we limit ourselves more than we needed to. And so if we really wanted to give to a charity, but we're feeling like, oh gosh, I don't know that my numbers are in the right spot to do that, or maybe in the best tax efficient way. There's a lot of different questions that will come up. So there's usually something that we would love to give to, or we would love to do and experience, but we're not doing it because we're afraid. And it's usually because we don't know the numbers, or we don't have confidence within the numbers. And that usually, I think, comes back to some sort of trauma. Like I grew up poor is one that we'll talk about here in a bit. But I think that this comes down to usually, what do you believe money is for? There usually falls into one of two camps, and that's one that you believe that money is for enjoying today, carpe diem kind of thing, or you believe that money is for setting up success for tomorrow. And if you believe in security or saving, it's for setting up success for tomorrow, that's great. And you're probably really prepared. You're probably exactly the type of client that an advisor wants to work with. And yet you might not be celebrating life enough. And maybe you're limiting yourself more than you need to be. And again, it could be, it's not like it's lavish lifestyle that you're maybe wanting to get into. Maybe it's just that there was a charity that you wanted to give to, but you weren't confident in where your numbers were. But then if you believe that money is for celebrating today, and and spending today, you might find that you're less prepared than you want to be, or maybe need to be. And yet you're probably also not being really honest with yourself, because are you going to want to live it up like this in retirement when you're not as active? But there's a reality check, and I do think that there's not a really great answer between the two. I think it's really more of a balance of being somewhere in the middle. But that's really what I see.
Yeah. And you mentioned like growing up poor, or maybe some trauma being in there. And you were also talking about, is it for now or is it for later? And I imagine the people who are in the it's for now and it's only for now camp might be the ones who we were talking about in our last episode. They're overspending, perhaps, if they don't know their numbers. And the people who are saying it's all for the future are the ones that we're talking about with maybe you didn't have enough, right? It doesn't feel so easy to just spend it now, because it feels like it could go away or disappear. The trauma piece of it makes so much sense to me, right? Because either like you grew up poor, so there is this money story of not having enough money, and so you want to have it saved up for the future. But it could also be you grew up poor and you don't want to feel poor, so you're spending money and maybe more than your numbers really say you should be spending. But the same could be true, like, let's say you grew up with money and then you lost it, right? Like, recession hit and bam, like a lot was gone. That could give you that same idea of let's spend it now while we have it. Or it could give you the idea of like, oh, it could all go away at any moment. And so I can't spend it all and I need to save.
I think one of the best things that we do throughout the financial planning process is specifically looking at cash flows. And I know that sounds super cringe, but cash flows are really important. And oftentimes when I have a client that's underspending, what we will do is we won't make an immediate change. Because again, usually there's some sort of a trauma behind what the emotion is. And we'll just check in once a year where we'll come back to the cash flows and we'll go, okay, we projected out that this is how much money you'd have left over by the end of the year. Is that how much we have? Do we have more? Do we have less? What do we want to do with that? And then it's not so much of the day-to-day and the month-to-month anxiety. Then at the end of the year, we can look and we can go, yeah, I do actually have that sitting in a savings account or whatever. Okay, well, does that need to go to that charity that you wanted to give to? Does this need to go to that college fund that you wanted to give to? Whatever it is that you were thinking about doing, what's maybe a way to do that you feel confident and safe. It's totally dependent on each and every person, but I would say that that's usually an easier way to go and not make so many changes so quick, and just go slow and really dive into what it is that we need. And then again, look at the end of the year and go, let's look at the numbers and see what we want to do. And year after year after those check-ins, people seem to become a little bit more confident.
Right? They're having, through working with you or whoever their financial planner is, they're having a reparative experience, right? They're having that experience of, I'm making enough money, I'm earning enough money, I have enough money, and it's not disappearing. Nothing is wiping it out. And so each year or each month or however frequently they look at that amount of money, they can see that it's still going well, it's still going well, it's still going well. And it reinforces that on an emotional level, that like, oh yeah, this is okay. This is safe to spend.
Yeah, and I think that that digs into also, like, if you feel like nothing is ever enough and you're starting to have that emotion of like nothing ever is ever enough, you need to, check it every day, that kind of thing. If you've got that kind of an emotion, we definitely recommend digging into that with a financial professional along with your therapist, because
Yes.
digging into that, what is enough, what do those numbers look like? And if you don't know your numbers and you're feeling that way, that makes a lot of sense. But let's find a safe space where we can go in and we can have that conversation and you don't feel pressured. I
Mhm.
often find that with those clients, they've got a whole bunch of money sitting in a savings account because they're afraid, and that's fine. If that's what makes you comfortable, that's fine. If you're not comfortable with that, then let's unpack that. But I think one of the things that financial advisors will often do is we'll see that as lazy money. We'll see that as money that's just sitting on the sidelines and it's not invested, or it's not doing this, or it's not doing that. At the end of the day, there's a whole other type of investment, and that's what my comfort level is. And if
Mhm.
you have that emotional comfort level where you can identify that with the professionals in your life, that helps to be able to say, this is how much I need to see day to day within my bank account, or whatever it is. But you need to be able to dig into that and identify what is that number, because otherwise, everything else, every path will get you there, and it's up to your own comfort level. But it does seem like, for me at least, I mean, I'm not the mental health professional here. It seems like for me, Megan, that a lot of this comes into maybe like the term is scarcity mindset. Like, is that accurate? Does that show up in different ways? What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely comes into scarcity mindset. Like that's exactly what we're talking about when we're saying not enough. I want to go back to something that you said though. You talked about like lazy money. It doesn't have a job. And I was like, well, first of all, what's wrong with laziness? Right?
I completely agree.
What is wrong with wanting things to be easy? Like life is hard. None of us get through it unscathed. So what's wrong with it being lazy? And second, I would actually say that this lazy money has a job, and its job might be to provide this person that feeling of safety.
I completely agree. Like, we had a client that came to us once, and she'd been, I don't know, kind of pressured by numerous advisors. And she came to us after working with an advisor for a long time. And it was a referral. And anyway, she comes to us and she grew up poor. And she, had this chunk of change that was sitting in the bank. And her financial advisors over the years had said, this is not working, it's not invested, it's not earning as much, etc. And she came to our practice, and when we dove into, okay, so unpack this cash balance, she immediately started to shut down, knowing or feeling like we were going to go into this whole explanation about what it could be earning and what its potential is and all of that stuff. And instead, we took it from the approach that we've been using for 30 years, which was, what is it that you want? What is it that you value? And she finally felt safe enough to unpack that, what, she grew up poor and she needed to have 3 years worth of her living expenses sitting in her bank account at all times for her own well-being. And she couldn't sleep at night if that wasn't the case. And so, perfect. We just put that in as, this is what that job is. It's not lazy. It's not that it doesn't have a job or a purpose, she was able to identify, this is the dollar amount I need to see every day to feel confident and to be able to sleep at night. And that's great. And there's a big power in being able to say, that's my number. And that's why I think that if you start to unpack what that is, what that number is, and you start to understand the numbers, you can get to that point. Otherwise, it's just that it's all just sitting there and you're not feeling confident at all.
Yeah, yeah. And that brought up a question for me of like, to me, I'm like, wow, 3 years worth of living expenses. That seems like a lot. And so I, okay, well, it does. But I wonder, like, what is the average that you would want somebody to have to just be like holding on to that they could pull out at any time that's not necessarily invested somewhere?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I say that depends.
Of
It
course.
it totally depends, because I think a lot of that has to do with not just what your living expenses are, but also what kind of job do you have. So if
Mhm,
you're self-employed, that's a different number than it is if you are a W-2 employee in super niche markets, that kind of thing. So it totally depends on who the employee is, what kind of job you have, and then that goes into what is that number. Typically, if I was going to give round numbers, I would say 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses is about on average. But like I said, I've got clients that are like, I've got way more job security, or I feel very
mhm,
confident in my ability to get another job if something happens. And they don't have as much cash on
mhm,
hand as they would someone else that maybe would be in something a little bit more volatile for job security. So I
mhm.
think that totally depends on the situation, but it also really depends on your job.
Yeah, that makes such perfect sense to me. 3 to 6 months is the range that I had heard, sometimes up to a year, depending on, what I hear all the entrepreneur advice, right? So that's where I'm getting that. Sometimes we're also not considering like if you do lose your job or your caseload goes down or something like that, chances are you're going to be cutting back your spending short term. So we
Yeah,
might
exactly.
like save that full amount, but we're probably going to be cutting back our spending.
hmm hmm And it also depends, I think, on, if you had to move to a new place. So your living expense in LA is going to be different than it is in Iowa, and that's
Mhm.
fine. But it also depends, if your job's going to move you somewhere else, maybe your living expense is going to be different. So I would love to be the person that would say, you have to have this number, because then that would make my life a lot easier. but it just depends on each case and each person's comfort level. So I think I would go back to what it is that you do for a job and what kind of assets you have on hand. How accessible is that? And then that would all go into how much do you want to have and where does it need to go.
Yeah. That also made me think about the other sources of support that people might have too to help them get through a financially rough time when maybe they do lose their job or they didn't book that client that they thought they were going to. So listen to the words in that scarcity mindset. There's fear in there, right? And the fear is coming from that belief that there's not enough. There's never enough. And I really think that part of that scarcity mindset comes down to this idea that there's not enough to go around, actually. Like, there's not enough for everybody. And I'm just not convinced that that's true, that there really isn't enough for everybody. It might not be distributed equitably or equally right now, but that does not necessarily mean to me that there's not enough for everybody.
Do you
So
think
if
that a scarcity mindset comes from, like, I had some sort of issue in the past and that was where that emotion came from?
Oh, for sure, right? Somewhere along the line, you got the message that either you weren't enough or there wasn't enough to go around. There wasn't enough for you or your family. And oftentimes both things feel true for people. Right? I work with the people who don't feel like they're enough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I'll hear from clients that had some sort of a drug addicted parent and they ran into that too, where, the paycheck went straight to dealing with that addiction, be that, a recovery process or just, continuing with the addiction. And it felt like there was never enough to go around because at that stage there really wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or even just like having a really large family, lots of siblings. Like I am the oldest of four, and in my family, what was communicated was like, there's only enough for each of you to do one sport at a time. Right? We can't afford the pay to play, the uniforms, the travel, all of that for multiple sports, for multiple kids, all at the same time. And I'm in a different situation as a parent. I have one child. We still limit our kiddo to one after school activity, but our statement is we're choosing to just do one activity right now because we don't want to feel overwhelmed. We want to have some evenings where we don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to be on a super tight schedule for dinner. We have some flexibility with our time. We're not making it about the money at all.
Megan, if we're feeling or identifying that we're feeling, avoidance, that we want to just avoid it, or we're feeling like nothing is ever enough, or that we're afraid, and maybe we're afraid of spending it at all, what do you think we should do?
So avoidance advice, same as last time. Right? Notice the avoidance first and get really curious about why it's there. And your curiosity is probably going to lead you to there is some sort of story in your past where there wasn't enough money. And so now there's part of you that's really afraid that if you spend this money, it's not going to be there when you need it, right? And then you'll regret it. And so you're working really, really hard not to feel like you don't have enough ever again, because that was a really hard feeling for you. So we have to notice all of those feelings that are happening within us. And if you are feeling like there is a layer of trauma to this, like it is really getting overwhelming for you to just get curious about those feelings or what was going on then I would encourage you to work on this with a therapist. But if it's not overwhelming to you, I want you to just get extra deep with like, well, what are you so worried about that is going to happen if you spend the money? And ask yourself, like, realistically, is there evidence that is likely? Maybe it is, right? And if there's evidence that thing is likely to happen again, like that can inform your decision, right? You get to choose. But if you're saying like, no, this is more of a feeling, but I don't really have any evidence, sometimes just getting to that logical place is enough for people to make that move, to be able to spend a little bit more. I also really like that advice that you gave, Beth, to not make any quick, immediate changes, right? To put it until the end of the year. This is what we had planned to save. This is what we actually have saved. And then decide, is this still what you want to do with the money? If those aren't helpful for you, that's the point to get some additional help yourself. You can read all the books and listen to all the podcasts, but sometimes you just need an outsider's perspective to help you move forward on something.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Money Healing. In this next episode, we're going to be talking about I don't know my numbers, and there's a domestic violence or an abusive situation. And going forward, of course, you can connect up with Megan and I via our website and our social media, which is all below in the link.